Hey guys, this is Snap, and today we're going to be bringing you a video about Aurabot's post-heist. There's been a ton of changes to Aurabot since my last video. My last full-fledged Aurabot video was made back in April 2019, which is just after Synthesis, and oh boy, a lot has changed. We got cluster jewels, alt quality gems, the addition of voices, some new Aurabot uniques that make the build a little bit better. So this video should serve as a guide of how to play an Aurabot start to finish, how to level on a new league start, how to transition it to endgame, how you want to build depending on who's in your party, and also when you should choose to go Victarios over Shavs, if at all. Once again, there are links down in the description with timestamps if you want to jump to a particular topic. So I'd encourage you to use those if you want to get info on a particular topic. But let's get right into it. Keep in mind that this Aurabot specifically is geared towards having at least 4 members in your party. That is a carry, an Aurabot, a curse bot, and a guardian. Therefore, you don't run any curses, and you don't run any disc effect. Alright, so let's start at the very beginning. First of all, the best Ascendency to roll support on right now is currently Ascendant. The reason for that is primarily cluster jewels. I'm sure you all know that cluster jewels are just insanely strong, and having the extra skill points really tips it over the edge in favor of Ascendant versus Necro. There are a few options of how you can really level an Aurabot to the appropriate level to transition to an Aurabot, but to me, traps make the most sense, and here's why. So when you're starting out as an Ascendant, there's a few nodes you want to grab in order to transition into an Aurabot around level 30. We want to start by coming out through the spell damage nodes and out to Harrier. From here, our goal is to grab 3 things. We want to eventually grab the 3 aura nodes: leadership, influence, and charisma down here. But you don't want to necessarily be beelining it straight away because you're not going to be grouping with your carry till around level 30. So I find that perfect skill to level up as a Scion to about level 30 where I can group with my teammates is Lightning Trap. Primarily because there's a really great node right here, Unstable Munitions, which is great for trap, and at the top right here by influence there's another good trap cluster called Hasty Reconstruction. Additionally, along the way there's a really great node called Crackling Speed, which can scale the lightning damage. The close proximity of these damage nodes as well as the low amount of regrets you need to respec makes it super appealing to go traps. These are the only damage nodes you're going to be taking, so you can see it takes around maybe 8-10 regrets total to respec your character back to an Aurabot, which you can easily grab from the story. When I'm starting out, I grab the passes in this order. I go to Unstable Munitions first, then I go up and grab Crackling Speed, and last but not least, you grab Hasty Reconstruction. From here, you fill out the aura nodes: influence, leadership, and last but not least, you path down here to grab Charisma. At this point, you're pretty much ready to group with literally anybody else who's playing a carry build. You'll be able to support them the entire rest of your progression. Quickly going over the rest of the passive tree before we get into the leveling specifics. From here, there's a couple of life nodes you can grab if you really need it before first Labyrinth. I like to grab this one right here, Hired Killer, just because it's 3 points and I can easily respec it. From here, you want to path over Foresight Energy Shield nodes and make your way over to Elemental Equilibrium. You can proc this with Flame Dash if you want. A really useful tool for helping applying Elemental Equilibrium is pairing it with Avatar Fire. This makes it so you're constantly applying a fire EE, making it so lightning based and cold based builds have a huge DPS increase. From here, the pathing should be pretty obvious. You want to run up here and grab the last aura effect node on the tree that you can grab, and then from here your tree is basically complete. From here you can grab 2 things. One is more life. There's a lot of life you have access to on the tree because you're going to be life based for a very long time. You can grab the melding cluster over here, which is a great node because you can eventually put a jewel socket here and convert all of this to energy shield with an energy from within and not have to spend regret points to do so. When you get regrets in the campaign, make sure to unspec these damage nodes because you no longer need them. Get rid of the other 2 damage nodes. Additionally, if you have the extra points, you can feel free to path down to the Scion life wheel. You're gonna have a lot of extra points and not a lot of stuff to spend it on until you get your first cluster jewel, so feel free to fill this out as much as you want. Your highest priority from here is going to be getting cluster jewels. You want to grab the 2 easy ones that are right here, mainly this large cluster jewel and this large cluster jewel because you already have access to them. Basically, you're really looking for anything here that is aura effect. Early on, you're not going to really have the perfect cluster jewels, and that's fine, but slapping on literally anything that is aura effect is going to benefit you in the long run. So maybe take like 10, 20 alts or whatever, just roll whatever cluster jewel you can get your hands on and just slap on whatever the best thing you get. The most important notables you can get are First Among Equals and Vengeful Commander. First Among Equals is just generic aura effect, and Vengeful Commander is an extremely powerful offensive aura effect buff. You can take your points, slap them in here, take as much aura effect as you can, fill out the other one, and you're good to go. If you find yourself that you're still life-based and haven't made the transition to low life at this point, you can take the extra points, maybe unspec some of this life nodes, and stretch your way down to this last cluster jewel and just jam another medium cluster jewel with aura effect in there. And then that's where you want to put your points until you go low life. So this is a general overview of the leveling tree, kind of how you're going to make it through the axe and where you're going to put your passives as you level up. The next thing to talk about is leveling. I'm going to be using a bit of footage here from our heist push where I was global rank 1 from about level 25 to like level 60, at which point my teammates passed me, and we also had first Katava, so it was a pretty good league start for us. Alright, so starting off, first things first, you spawn on the beach, kill Hillock, get to town, and you want to do the following. You want to use your 3 wisdoms to buy Stormblast Mine and 2 wands. Preferably you're looking for blue-green links, or just blue-green if you're unable to get the 3 link right away. Regardless, you're going to want to buy yourself 2 wands. Equip the Stormblast Mine, it's fine if it's a 1 link. Don't bother linking it to Onslaught because it is not affected by it. You're going to run through the coast, you're going to run to the mudflats, break the eggs, go down to the Submerged Passage, warp back to the coast, and now you're going to the Tidal Island to get your Quicksilver, kill Hellrake. Sure, you guys know the gist here. Right here at level 4 is where you'll get a few important skill gems. You'll get Lesser Poison, which is something you can slap on temporarily, linking that to your Stormblast Mine. Additionally, you will get Frost Blink and Frost Bomb. You want to equip the Frost Blink for mobility, obviously, and then also the Frost Bomb. You want to link the Frost Bomb to Onslaught, and eventually you're going to want to get that Frost Bomb to a 3 link, blue-green, which is Frost Bomb, Onslaught, and Added Lightning. It is going to be your main clear link for Act 1, so setting up that 3 link is a pretty high priority. You continue on as normal. Your next upgrade will be Added Lightning damage after Brutus, which is at level 8, and also you'll get Flame Dash at level 10. Along the way, you're going to be wanting to pick up any blue or yellow items you get along the way because you're going to need 2 transmutes by the time you hit Act 2. This is pretty important, so make sure you fill your inventory and sell it whenever you get the chance. To get to Act 2 and level 12, you're going to want to buy 3 things. You want to go back to Act 1 and buy Smite, so you can start leveling it when you transition to Aurabot. You can put it in your offhand if you don't have room. And then also, you're going to buy Lightning Trap, multiple traps. Your 3 link for these traps are going to be Added Lightning, multiple traps, and Lightning Trap. This 3 link will carry you well through Act 2 and 3, and by that point, hopefully you should be an Aurabot, so this 3 link is definitely very, very important to set up. There's a few more crucial upgrades that'll help your damage that you really need to pay attention to, the first of which is a wand upgrade. It's not super necessary on this Aurabot build, as you'll most likely be getting pushed through the campaign anyways if you're in a coordinated group, but crafting the +1 recipe on your wands is pretty important. Alongside that, grabbing Herald of Thunder at level 16 and also summon Skitterbots, which costs an alt, are 2 very, 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 very important upgrades you need to grab to boost your damage. Once you have that 3 link set up and you have your Heralds and your Skitterbots, the next thing you should be focusing on is trying to set up your Aura 4 link. Your Aura 4 link is going to be Smite, Wrath, Generosity, and Anger. So that's 3 red and 1 blue. That is the 4 link that you'll be using for a very, very, very long time. But getting that is going to be your highest priority. The earliest place you can get Generosity is through the library. So if somebody in your group is doing that, have them buy you Generosity at the library for 1 chance orb. The Lightning Trap will carry you well into Act 4 if you need it to, and don't make the mistake of transitioning to Aurabot too early. You definitely want to have that 4 link set up where you have the Generosity, as well as all of the correct nodes in order to go Aurabot. And really gimp yourself if you try and go Aurabot too early, so make sure you have that 4 link and make sure you have all the right nodes. But if you pull it off everything correctly, that 4 link should carry you and your carry, and you should be able to farm the rest of the campaign with relative ease. That 4 link is really strong. Everything else should be pretty straightforward from here. The next thing you want to look out for is in Act 6. You want to do the regret point that's in the Tidal Island because this gives you access to the skill gem vendor. When you get access to the skill gem vendor, you're going to want to buy all of the auras you eventually want to use. Even though you can't fit them on, it's really good to get levels here and also fill in all of your offhands because you're eventually going to corrupt them. So you want to buy all of the purities. You want to buy Discipline, Grace, Haste, as well as Hatred. Fill as many of the sockets as you can with extra auras. It's really important that you do this for later on. The next big upgrade in the Aurabot build comes in Act 8 during the Bathhouse quest where you kill the dude that sprints around. That awards you with the Conqueror's Jewels. You're going to want 1 of each, so you're going to have somebody in your party give you a Conqueror's Efficiency or a Conqueror's Potency, whichever the one that you don't choose. When you socket the Conqueror's Efficiency, this will let you run another 50% aura with all of the aura nodes. I personally think Grace is the best thing to turn on at this point. It gives you the most survivability and hopefully Hopefully, if everybody in your party is managing the resistances, you really won't need the purity if everybody is performing crafts at the correct times. The Grace also provides a really good safety net in Cruel and Merc Lab, which is where a lot of people die, especially early on. And so reducing deaths in these scenarios is super important. Once you have all of that set up, it should really carry you into white, yellow maps, even some early reds. At this point, you should be accruing the gear necessary to go low life. It's important to convince your group to gear out the Aurabot as best you can, because the Aurabot carries the entire group's survivability and damage. There are basically three main things you need in order to make the transition to low life. You're going to need Prism Guardian, Alpha's Howl, and Shavs. Once you have these three items, you can go ahead and make the plunge and convert your entire build to low life. You can really fill the rest of the gear with just cheap ES uniques, maybe spend a couple of chaos on some Syntrex. But once you have those three core items, that is when you should make the transition. Now that we got like kind of the leveling stuff out of the way, we can get into the little nitty gritty about how we want to build the endgame Aurabot. You're going to hear a lot of things from a lot of people about whether or not to go Shavs or Victarios. Okay, it's the number one question, all right? And it purely comes down to a function of cost. You want a simple, clear-cut explanation. If your build is going to cost less than 100x, you should always go Shavs every time. You're going to get more bang for your buck that way. You're going to be able to run more auras, you're going to be able to run more things, buff it up with Empower, and the reservation won't be an issue. Obviously, the higher end of Aurabots is going to be dominated by Victarios builds. But honestly, if you're not spending upwards of 100x on your Aurabot, there's absolutely zero reason to go Victarios in my eyes. Purely because the EHP is way too low to be doing T16 5-orb Delirium maps or even T19 5-orb Delirium maps. To push a similar amount of damage, Victarios builds are often sacrificing a ton of ES, going something like 5, 6k or something like that. Whereas a Shavs build can easily push 9k on the cheap side. So if you're not planning on spending an absolute fuck ton of currency on your Aurabot, just don't go Victarios. But keep in mind that the high ends are always going to be Victarios because they do scale better, obviously. The version that I play, and I'm obviously most familiar with, is the Shavs variant of Aurabot because the majority of our playtime as a group falls within like a 1, maybe 2 week playtime after the league starts. So generally, I'm not investing an absolute fuck ton of currency into my Victarios Aurabot because generally we don't really play as a group past 2 weeks. Also, another thing to note about Aurabots is you can change your build a little bit based on the type of build that you're supporting. Generally, Fizz-based spells scale the most with Aurabots because you have access to Hatred as well as Zealotry, whereas an Ellie attack build wouldn't really benefit from either of those things. Our skill of choice for the carry these days is Penance Brand. I'm going to be doing a video on that build pretty soon here. But here is a snapshot of my character at the end of 9 days of playtime in Heist. POE is going to be down in the description if you want to check it out. We're sitting at 8.7k ES almost, and we also have the 90 overcap, which are two very important benchmarks to hit. You want to get your EHP, Energy Shield, over 8k. You also want to have that overcap to 90 for your party. Aurabots builds these days almost always exclusively are abusing the very great Cluster Jewel voices. I find that getting 5 passive voices is the sweet spot for cost versus power. Obviously, this build can use 1 passive voices, but are you really going to spend that much money? Probably not. This build completely works with 7 passive voices. You're just going to lose a little bit of Energy Shield having to use 7 passive voices. But honestly, anybody playing POE a fair amount should be able to accrue enough currency to afford 2 7 passive voices. One goal you want to hit with your Aurabot is to hit this 90 overcap, and that is achieved by getting 300% generic aura effect. You can find out how much aura effect you have if you go to Calcs, you choose the skill, and you can see this value here says aura effect mod 3.03. That is essentially 300% increased effect of the aura. Anything over 3 is excess and should be put into Vengeful Commanders to boost your damage instead. So there's a few things you need to know when buying Cluster Jewels for this build. You want to get enough 6 passive auras with First Among Equals to get to that 300% aura effect. And if you have extra aura effect, you want to fill them with Vengeful Commanders. The small Cluster Jewels for this build is pretty straightforward. They're just all 2 passive energy from Knots. Any of the small rolls are just considered a bonus, really. In order to fit in the reservation for everything, this build in particular uses 1 of each Pure Aptitude, Pure Guile, and Pure Might. This gives you just enough unreserved mana at 2% to fit everything in. The gem links are in the POB. I'm not going to really bore you with the details of this, but the main thing here is going to be the gearing of the character. A lot of these are uniques, which makes it pretty straightforward to gear, but there's a couple things like the rolls you need to pay attention to, which are pretty important. First of all, Sign of the Sin Eater. I think this is an absolutely mandatory unique. The damage it provides is just crazy. You can get a better rare, but honestly, Early in the league, Sign of the Sin Eater is going to be really hard to beat. It's also like 1 or 2 chaos early on. I highly recommend this. There's a few familiar items that you've seen probably on every Aura build, like Prism, Guardian, and Alpha's Howl. The corruption here is obviously not necessary. This Alpha Howl has a Hatred enchant, which also isn't necessary. You could easily replace one of these Cluster Jewels with another Reservation if you're having trouble fitting everything in. The Cluster Jewels is your main tool that you can use to fiddle with the Reservation to try and fit everything in. And if you aren't able to fit everything in, try taking more Reservation Cluster Jewels over Aura Effect. Shav's pretty self-explanatory. You're going low life, you gotta wear a Shav so you don't die to chaos damage. Hands of the High Templar, which is a unique introduced with Cyrus. Essentially, you're looking for 2 corruptions. You're looking for the +1 socketed Aura gems, and then the +1 socketed of Aura, or the +2 level of socketed AoE gems. Either of them work okay, but the socketed Aura is slightly better. You're gonna be putting your damage links in here, so these extra levels on the Wrath and Anger and that kind of stuff really goes a long way. Next up is Sintrek, a fan favorite. Obviously, you can get a better pair of boots if you craft it rare, but I find that Sintrek is so available, so easy to get. It's almost my always go-to boots for a support build. Eventually, you want to be looking to get a presence with the Anoint Allocates Champion of the Cause. Champion of the Cause, of course, giving you some extra mana reservation. It's a no-brainer. You can see it's also on the other side of the tree, so almost every Aura build will be anointing this thing down here. Also gives you stun immunity, which is sick, and also a bunch of chaos res, which with a flask allows you to get chaos capped on this build. The rings are really where you have the most choice on the build. Generally, there are 2 mandatory stats on your rings, and that is the % increase energy shield and the flat increase energy shield. Here you can get a ton of EHP, so you should almost always have these. The second stat you want to look out for is strength and or dex. This can save you a passive point on the tree, so those are definitely things to look out for on the rings. The last thing is having an open suffix so that you can craft non-channeling skills have -9 to total mana cost. This lets you do 2 things. It lets you cast Flame Dash and Smite in no regen maps. Now obviously you could just avoid no regen maps, and a lot of people do, making this mod unnecessary, but when you're either fracturing 5-orb Delirium maps or you're voling them, having the access to Flame Dash and Smite is obviously a no-brainer. Last one is String of Servitude. You have 2 options here. You can get a Wrath, String of Servitude if you're supporting an attack-based build, or Hatred if you're supporting something like Penance Brand. Last setup should be pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you're getting a max roll Soul Catcher for uptime on Vaal Grace. Speaking of Vaal Grace, this is super important. I cannot stress enough how OP Vaal Grace is on a support build. It is the most OP skill in the entire game. When you're just breaking into maps, you want to make sure to get a dedicated support link for your Vaal Grace and Vaal Disc, linked to increased duration, and getting this Soul Catcher to reduce the cooldown is a very high priority. It's literally a button that makes you avoid 75% of everything. So please set this up properly and you will die almost never. It's just impossible to die. You're unkillable. I see too many people who set up an Aurabot and they say, I'm dying and I don't really know what's going on. And I take a look at their profile and they're not running Vaal Grace. It's literally just a skill gem that makes you invulnerable. You have to set it up. Please, God. Please stop asking me to look at your support build you don't have Vaal Grace on. All right, moving on. A few things to note here about particular skill gem setups, especially with the addition of Heist. We do know that Heist is going core, so I assume that these alt quality skill gems are coming along with them. These brought an incredible amount of power. One of the most easy things to abuse is a level 1 Divergent Vitality. It reserves like 12 mana or something like that. You can also link it to Enhance, and this gives you the full buff of the damage while on full life, even at level 1. So you're getting 44% increased damage while on full life before aura scaling. So that's something like 160% damage while on full life. This is very easily a 2-link, but I have this in my Sign of the Sin Eater with Awakened Generosity, so it's getting just a little bit more aura effect that way. One last thing is the Ascendency. You're going to want to start by going up to Necro, and then you're going to want to grab Guardian, and then last you grab Path of the Witch. Path of the Witch, so you can start right up here. It saves you a few skill points, which you can put into cluster jewels. But yeah, I think that about wraps up playing Aurabot in current year. Obviously, there's a new league coming up here in about a month, and I'll be sure to document any changes to the Aurabot that may be forthcoming. I wouldn't be surprised if Aurabot ate a few collateral nerfs to the aura stacking meta people have been complaining about for so long, so we'll see if any changes are coming our way. Otherwise, I am going to be doing a guide on the Penance Brand carry we're going to be doing, and also an overview of our MF carry that we played last league that we plan to play again next league. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, anything I missed in the video, please feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll try to respond to as many people as I can. Once again, thanks for watching.